Yeah, hi, and also welcome from my end at the CheckMK conference today. I prepared one speech for business intelligence, IT services. So this is a very big project that I was in charge of since the beginning of last year. Just about myself, very briefly. I work at Comnet, and in 2013 I started with my training as an IT administrator at Comnet, and we are an owner-led company, IT services. We came from the LAN area. We have 80 employees, locations in Hanover, headquarters Hamburg, Bremen, Frankfurt, Gelsenkirchen, and Munich. And we are also CheckMK partners. So we also do CheckMK trainings in Hanover and 24/7 support service for racks. And yeah, so I'm also part of the team that is taking care of CheckMK customers. And since the beginning of last year, I'm in charge of a big project for IT services, and that is for a big insurance company. And there are 2,000 hosts and 100,000 services that we're taking care of in the whole IT setting. And the goal is that with CheckMK, we do monitoring and also to have the IT landscape so that the management also can have some benefit here and can also see the availability. Okay, first off, I would like to tell you what does it mean? What does IT service mean? And then I'm going to talk about availability, how we measure that in CheckMK for this project, and also then just show it in reports, for example. Okay, an IT service this is just the definition. So it's an IT service that happens. So an IT service is a model to really show part of the whole thing. So just a brief example, there's an IT service that's called email. So that means that the users in the insurance company are supposed to be able to send emails, and they need different components for that. They need a mail service, they need internet access, and all of that is then, all these components come together for this IT service email. And because of that, we have business processes that they are dealing with on a regular basis. That's how they are visible, and this is all customer oriented. So that means that the IT environment is available for the customer, the end user is working with it, and yeah, that's what it's all about. Okay, so the whole thing has a structure, of course, and that structure is very similar to OZ, and it's OC layer. So we have many different services that were defined. For example, we have network services, LAN services, and of course infrastructure services and different applications, SAP and so on. So all of that is structured in 4 different categories. So basic services, so those are the network components, then infrastructure services, then we have application and additional services, and then of course client services. So I do have a graph for that. So you can see some examples for the basic services. What we have here, those are all LAN components, DMZ for example, and also the storage infrastructure. Okay, so this is comparable to the OC layer system. So we have the structure here from LAN to the end user. Okay, and then of course we also have an additional form of structuring right here of IT services. So we said, okay, there are core services and supportive services. and support services are subcategories of the core services that we defined. For example, a core service could be application, for example, where all the applications that the user needs to use. So that means under the core services, we have components, for example, SAP SharePoint, Exchange, and also web applications, so everything that the insurance company is using. So for this project, we have about 30 of these core services that we defined, and the amount of support services really always depends. It depends on how many applications there are, and we really haven't defined all of them. That number is not determined so far. And then we thought, okay, what kind of IT service needs to be visible for the customer? So there are different views. So the insurance company wants that everything works properly, obviously, and if there is one problem, for example, though some of the processes don't work, then of course the availability needs to show that. So the management wants to see that. And what you have to do here is you have to differentiate, for example, if something doesn't work, that the end user doesn't even notice. For example, a redundant switch net part doesn't work. IT knows, okay, there is a problem. Yes, we have to act, we have to do something, but the end user that is using the software, they don't even realize that there is a problem. So that means for these IT services, what we have to do, we have to consider that. So we really have to consider, okay, what's part of availability and what needs to be visible for the end user and what doesn't matter to the end user. Okay, so how does CheckMK do that in terms of availability? Well, there is a very nice overview right here in the new documentation of the CheckMK website. And this is how CheckMK checks if a service is considered available. So there are different statuses that you can see here. So if, for example, a node in a BI aggregation at a certain point in time wasn't monitored during monitoring, then what we see up here, this is the case that this node is considered unmonitored. So we have this feature. Well, this feature was just developed recently that this monitoring is taking place because we always had the problem if we had a BI aggregation with different hosts and we have added a new host to this aggregation, then until this point in time, it wasn't part of the monitoring. And of course, this was a problem for availability because by the time the host was part of the aggregation, it was considered as not available. So we have this filter that was developed so that we can show it as unmonitored, this host. And of course, this doesn't have a negative impact on the availability. Okay, and you can continue that on, so it checks the individual values right here. So maybe is there flapping in the downtime, things like that, and then all the way and then tells you yes, it's available, there's warning, critical, or unknown. So those are the values that we are distributing for our views and our reports, and the management just wants to know, okay, is there availability for this IT service or not? Okay, so now just a brief example of what it looks like in CheckMK. So we have different BI aggregations that were built for the individual IT services. It's starting with the root up there, so we defined that up here. So that's the name of the IT service. And in this example, it's LAN right here, as you can see, Rechenzentrum. Then we have all the different components that are listed right here, core switches, and so on, different switches, access switches. So they would also be right here. I mean, you don't see them right here, but they could be right here. So this is just a view that's specifically for support. And that means that IT, for example, if they want to know if there is a redundant network part that's not working. And again, we have the possibility to say if there's a redundant device that's not working, then it could either be shown in the aggregation as a crit or a warning, because the support team wants to know, okay, there's something wrong, the IT service has some disruption, some problem, and to them that's interesting. However, if we have the case that the management wants to know whether there is availability or not, then we have to aggregate it differently. So for the two clusters that are redundant, the management doesn't want to know whether or not something doesn't work if we have redundancy. So that means for management, there's no limitation of the IT service, and the availability is still there because one of the devices does work, or one of the things does work. And as long as the IT service is still working overall, then it's still okay. So that means we have different views. We have this view for support because they do want to see it, and this is for the management level. They don't need to see it if there's something that's just redundant. So another thing that we thought of was that we can really tell, okay, if there is a problem, if there's just one individual employee has a problem from one department, for example. So if we have one department and there's just one individual user that can't work, so is that considered downtime or not? So we talked about that in management, different meetings, and of course you can say, okay, there's no downtime because all the other colleagues in that same department don't have a problem, there's no downtime. So this was just defined individually for each IT service. And the other case would be, the other case that could happen is, okay, you're talking about downtime is if a whole department can't work. So in CheckMK, we implemented everything not by department but by building. So I have a live demonstration for you. I want to switch to that. Hold on. Doesn't seem to work. Just 1 second. Can you see that? Okay, so what we did was we are building a dashboard with different BI aggregations. So what we have here is the whole structure that we just saw. So it's similar to the OZ layer model. So we have individual views in this dashboard for the basic service infrastructure services and client IT services. And again, I have a basic service, IT, service office LAN, and we have components right here that are grouped by location. So everything was configured in a way that we use WebEx. I'm going to open the configuration right here. And for each IT service, we have an individual configuration pack. Can we have this a little bit bigger, please? Let me try to do that. I'm going to zoom so you can see it. Is that good? Okay, so for each IT service that we want to show, we have an individual group right here, BI pack. And right here, for example, we have the office LAN that I was talking about earlier. So this is the tree right here. And we have the aggregation set up in a way that we automatically see the location. So that means we have two locations, and 1 and 2. I'm going to close that so you can see it easier right here. And these locations have different different levels that we want to see. So we want to see, okay, which level is it and which location is it where there's a downtime. And we have an advantage right here. We have switches. The switches are named in a way in terms of the host name that it's always a scheme. So that means we have SW for switch, and then we have minus the location, and then again a minus and the level, and then you just number it. So we have the host names that we can use to really have some intelligence behind it. And this is what it looks like. We have this tree right here, IT Service Office LAN, and we are just now going to look for another rule, the hardware rule. So we made the decision that we are going to have the hardware and application. Those are subcategories. That's how we differentiate. For Office LAN, we only have hardware checks. And because of that, that rule is then also applied. Okay, so we have IT Service Office LAN hardware is working the following way. So we can say, okay, we want to have nodes automatically on the basis of a host search. So that means we can put a regex in here, regex, and we are using that to find the hosts that we want to show. So the whole thing has to be in brackets, so that this hostname is a parameter. I'm not sure. Some of you might know regex pretty well, but if you use these brackets, it's called matching groups, and these matching groups can then be differentiated even more in arguments right here. So the first bracket that we're opening right here gives us a result, so everything that is inside the bracket. So if you're looking for that, then the whole thing is then going to be delivered as a result and is then going to be down here as $1 because it's the first bracket. That's how they reference it. So what we are going to do now is a search with the host name SW for switch, and then afterwards we have another bracket, which is this one right here. So we're looking for SW and then for whatever's in that bracket. And this part that's in that bracket can then be referenced again because it's a second bracket. So it's $2. So we're going to continue right here. So we're looking for some level that we want to reference and then a number behind it. So that means with this bracket right here, we are able to have the location of the host because it's in the name of the host. So that's this part right here. And we can reference it down here to the next rule that we have. So we now have the rule IT service, office LAN, hardware location, and then as an example for the upper host that we have Han1. So that's what's in the second bracket. And this IT service office LAN location then gets that location, obviously, and then we are also going to write it in the title, so it's organized. So that means this Han1 is what we're getting. And down here we have another host search, and we're looking for switch, our location variable, Han1, for example. And then afterwards we have another bracket so that we can look for the level. Okay, so the last step, we are going to hand over the location and also the level right here as a new parameter. So $2, and this is the second bracket in our regex. So then overall, this rule is right here. So we would say, okay, switch minus location as a variable minus level dot star. asterisk. So in this way, with regex, we have 4 rules, and we really created this very complex tree that automatically groups these locations for us. Are there any questions, or was that clear? I don't see any questions right now, so that's good. I do have a quick question back here. Okay, so I'm interested in knowing the whole topic is something that we are doing in our company as well with the whole BI, and it would be nice if we had the possibility to not only have the host name, but also by using other things. That is something that maybe could be extended here, because I think especially if you're doing complex BIs, for example, then it's very interesting to have more options. And I think maybe other people might agree. For example, well, there's the possibility to do the whole thing by host text. So that's what we see here as well. If we look at the rule again, so again, you can filter right here. So that could be an alternative that you could use. Ah, okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Okay. Okay, so after we thought about how we're going to do that, we then were confronted with the question, okay, how about very short downtimes? For example, a user who has a connection problem and then just has to log into the system again. It might take a minute. And is that considered a downtime that has an impact on availability? Well, the whole thing, of course, you have to really talk about it with each individual as IT service. And we made the decision that only starting at a longer period of time, if the system is not available, that's when we limit availability. And we did that via the service periods. And oh, I'm sorry, that was wrong. We did that via the view of the availability. So what we did is we have the possibility right here to say we have different time periods that we don't want to see. So right here we were thinking about a value that is good for the service aggregation, so that we just have short downtimes and they are not considered here. Okay. So for many people, the question arose how to really have all these different services that are in the aggregation, how you determine them. And for our project with the insurance company, what we have is that each individual area, each IT service has their own person that's responsible. And they say, okay, what kind of services need to be in this aggregation, which ones are relevant for availability, and where does management need to know if there is some downtime. And also redundancies as well need to be known, of course, in order to aggregate them properly. And of course, we don't want a downtime, for example, where there's a redundant device that kicks in, but the whole thing is considered a downtime. Of course, we don't want that. Again, we also thought about, okay, what kind of services are relevant for availability. And for example, when it comes to services, what does that mean? So as an example right here, we have a web application and we have the service Apache 2. And we were thinking, okay, so what is it like if this service is running? What does that tell the end user? Can he use the system if the service is running? And we were just thinking about that for the end user, what is it like? And if a service is on, it doesn't mean that the user can even work with it. So we made the decision to, in this case, for example, we have the HTTP check to show it this way instead of using a service, because this way we can say it's not only the Apache that's running, but we can also reach the web server and the website is available and the user can log in, and you can do that with the HTTP checks. And this is the only way to make sure that we can make a statement, okay, is this service really available? Okay, so now it's about the service periods, and there's always a goal in terms of availability that we want to reach, of course, and there are agreed upon times at which point in time the service needs to be available. So as an example, we have a table right here, Monday through Friday, between 7 and 8 p.m. The service needs to be available. On Saturdays, it's 7 to 4 p.m. So the goal value of 99%. And the report that we are going to create in the end, that's what you're going to find. And at this time that you see in this table right here, that's when the service needs to be available. So of course we have service periods for that, and that also means for each individual service that we have in the BI aggregation, we have the period in there when the service needs to be available. And if the availability is under this goal value, then of course you have to analyze why that is the reason, or why that happened, how it can be improved, why there is downtime. That can be done via the timeline feature. And again, this is something that I would like to show you in a live demonstration.
So if we look at the availability of an aggregation, there's the button timeline up here, where we can see, well, this is a bit large now. Now we can see the entire line. So in a certain period of time, the complete IT service was available. I have another one picked here. The IT service monitoring, where we have different monitoring hosts that are being simulated. This morning I did a simulation that a host is not available for a certain period of time. Here is the availability, and it's down a little. This is for today. And in the timeline we can see, alright, from this time to that time, so started at 8:19 and ending at 8:42, the entire aggregation was in a warning state. So clicking the magic wand, we can see exactly what was the base for this, why was the aggregation not available. So a host was down, and this affected the IT service monitoring. That was not okay at that time, but it had shown us a warning. What do these goals that we set actually mean for each IT service? There is a maximum downtime that I have presented here. So if we want to have an availability of 99.99% per year, this would mean that the IT service could be down for a bit less than an hour in that year. So of course it would be useful not to do it per year, but maybe set a downtime per month, because at 99.0%, you could have 88 hours of downtime, which could be in a row, and for the end user, this is not a nice situation. So you would think about whether you want to do it per year, per week, per month. I mean, this can be set up per IT service. The display of availability happens in a BI tree, as we have seen in the demo. It's always split up into a hardware area, which we can see up here. It's folded in, and an application field. Of course, this enables us to see immediately whether it's a hardware defect or a software error. Underneath, we have the tree configuration for the components of the IT services, different hosts, several applications, services, and so on. This gives us a quick overview over the live situation. And to show it very nicely and clearly, we have also created the possibility to do a PDF report, a monthly PDF report, for example, that shows whether in a certain period of time an IT service was available or not. We have a question?
Yes, I have a question. How does that work exactly?
Wie funktioniert das genau? Denn die BI-Aggregation zeigt bestimmte Services,
When a specific server
aber wenn ein bestimmter Server nicht funktioniert, sieht man das in der BI-Aggregation? Das hängt von der Regel ab, die wir gesetzt haben für die Aggregation. Wir können sagen, dass der schlechteste Host in der Aggregation den Baum dann kritisch macht oder ob alles passt. Also wenn es ein redundantes Teil ist, dann können wir sagen, dass es okay ist, wenn ein Host ausfällt, aber einer muss laufen.
so it depends on the criteria that
Also es hängt von den Kriterien ab, die man sich festgelegt hat. Aha, danke. In the PDF report, we also have the availability levels. We can see them down here. So here we have the target availability, and it is directly visible whether the goal is likely to be met or not, which is something we can do on a weekly or a monthly basis. And this gives management a nice overview whether the IT services were available or not. Are there any further questions? Hello, Stefan Preis from West German television. We're not using it for BI, but it does sound interesting because in products and services we do plan to extend a little an SNDB that would post information. I've seen you did it all very nicely and manually, but the question is it technically feasible that I can do it from the outside, like send in the aggregation from the outside? Are there APIs for this? And is this something that we should even look into, like automating this? Or is the manual realization actually better because you have to adapt it anyway and talk about it anyway, and then there is no interface that you have to maintain? So in one or two sentences, does it make sense? Well, right now I don't know whether there's a way to control it by an API. We always do it manually because whenever a new service or host is added, we have to add it manually anyway, and then this is an extra step that we have to do anyway. Maybe a little advice here: if you have very similar aggregates, like for every EUTL instance there's one, you can do it within the BI, the automation. Like you can create an automatic lookup, which is even easier. I have a question about the BIs. the series periods, does it work on the host or on the PIs? Right now it's on the hosts. We do think about putting them on the BIs directly, but right now it's something we haven't implemented. In your presentation, there were two aggregations for management and support. How did you do this in like software-wise, because it's the same aggregation? Yes, we created different views by by copying it, once for management, once for support, and then we adapted the rules accordingly, whether a certain value is a warning or a crit. So this is available twice in the configuration. Yes, exactly, that's it. Do you also do alarms through this aggregation, like SMS or something? We do not. So far, we only have the reporting function. Is there an alarm option? Yes, there is. You can take the BI aggregation as a separate service and add it as a service. There is an active check for that. And then, of course, that can be, you can put an alarm on that. I have a check MK question. Maybe an automatic check could be implemented here, because my problem is that every time it's in the treasure directory, the active check, with every update I have to see whether anything has changed in here and then copy it again to the directory. It would be nice if I perform an update and then automatically the active check is still there and it's refreshed automatically or updated automatically. Lars, isn't that the case now? That is through Vato? You don't have to copy things anymore? Well, there's two issues to this. There are two generations. There's the local check, what you just mentioned, that can be installed on the monitoring server, and then it aggregates the data for the BI state. So it would be something that has to be copied. And then the other thing, a check that is being configured in Vato directly, the active check. And for that, you do not need to copy files. You just go to Vato, configure a rule set that the active check has been added, and then the monitoring server has been set up to the aggregate. You look like you are not happy with the answer. No, my story is this. For 3 years, I have this BI implemented, and 3 years ago it was very basic. I did not change it to the new rule set, and I did not know it's in the new rules. No, the local check is obsolete. You can do it directly now. So if you have built a BI and a colleague deletes a check that's in there deliberately or by accident, would you notice that the BI has changed? That's a valid question. I do not think that currently you could see that. So the BI is deliberately constructed so that things that are not present do disappear. So that means with one rules, you can have 10 different instances of one application, and you can formalize it, and depending on how far the application is being expanded, they're being shown in the tree. So that things that are not present are not shown in the tree. That is a deliberate decision. I have a short question about the development team. For the definitions of the aggregates, as we've seen in the instances, is there an export format or some format that I can use in an external reporting or documentation tool to have the definition and the state of the aggregate shown. There was a JSON export once, but the links to the service weren't in there, so there was no internal logic shown in that export. Everybody understand my question? Yes, as you said it, the tree as you can see it can be exported, but you do not get the logic behind it. That is true. We these things always go directly into a ticket. The JSON tree would have to be expanded just to have the aggregation function and the best of in there. I mean, it that would be a way to complete it, right? Well, the states are in the export. Talking about availability, right now the availability is manually being compared with the should be values, right? How about writing a check for doing that? Like it says, look out, last week the availability was below the should be value. Yeah, let me open that. So you want to see, or you want to create a check that looks at manipulation or sabotage? No, if availability goes down because of certain downtime. So if we say we want 99.9%, and this check could simply, well, do a check and look at availability, what the real availability was, and then could send an alarm. Tomorrow, when talking about the roadmap, we will have something about alarm monitoring, like active monitoring of SLAs, and saying we are already at 50% downtime and we should do something, but this is not yet implemented. Yeah, I saw something, the view for the service and for the management. What does it look like? Do you have to import every server twice, or with your regex are they automatically in there? Are they both automatically being updated? No, right now we have to do it twice. We are still looking into better options, but currently we are not doing every IT service with both views, but only where necessary. So support looks at, or primarily looks at not only IT services, but at normal checkmk views. Couldn't you just clone the BI and change it? Cloning? I don't think we can do that. Well, usually it's not necessary to duplicate rules. I mean, rules access rules, and maybe you just need to change a little thing in the tree, and then the other rules could remain as they are. I have a question. How much does support actually look at the BI view and not at the normal dashboard? I mean, I've already looked at it as a business view for management, but you can also have filters for contact groups. I'm not sure where the use case is for this. No, support doesn't really look at it. For them, it's only interesting that they can see management could be unhappy with this or that. Now, looking at the example, the BI packs, the root packs, maybe this is again for the development team. Is there a plan to have the packs? They also exist in the event console to make them importable and exportable. So through Exchange, maybe Exchange packs that could be interesting for several customers. Yes, we have a concept developed for this, so that configuration parts could be put into MKPs and sent around. There is a concept, but we are not currently working on it. There is another question. Maybe you are planning, or maybe it's a plan for the future, to use NAQUIS to visually display BI maps. I mean, for management, this could be very interesting. NAQUIS can natively include BI objects such as holes and services, if this is answering your question. No, I mean, in the BI, you can go from bottom to top and maybe create a possibility to turn this into some kind of graphical display. So you can also see the lower services, so that the relation could be part of a graphic. Like our IT environment is built as a diagram that is related to the from one level to the next, and our IT leadership likes to have a graphical display, so you can see the entire environment and can see where the problems may be located. And if you put this much into a BI, it does become a bit much to look at for the IT, for head of IT in our company. Lars, do you know something about this? What is possible today already is that you take the tree that is in the standard checkmk GUI, you can put it into NAQUIS as a container element. So next to the regular objects you have in the map, you can also have the tree you can open. But the question remains whether visually this still makes sense, because a map can be thrown at the wall, so you can look at it, but it's not interactive. But maybe a tree with tiny letters also may not be the best idea. It depends on the map you want to use, really. But this expandable tree, you can put the URL of checkmk in there into the map, and then interactively open and close this. NAQUIS per se does not have a visualization mode for this. All right, I thank you for the questions, for the feedback. A lot of questions means a lot of interest, which is great. Do you want to say another thing, or are you... No, I'm done. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a lot of fun here at the CheckMK conference.